The story begins in 1946, Australia. At night, a van and a car are seen driving down a quiet road. Inside the van are several sealed boxes marked with a bank's insignia. It's clear these are stolen goods being smuggled illegally. Among the group are Dylan Maddock, a ruthless gangster, and his three partners, Janusz Wojcik, Dylan's right-hand man, Sean Cullen, and Dwight Lewis. During the trip, something goes wrong. Dwight loses control of the van, and the vehicle crashes into a nearby river. The water is deep, and the van, along with all the valuable cargo, sinks to the bottom. Sean and Dwight barely manage to escape by swimming to shore. But Dylan is furious. Those boxes contain something extremely valuable. In a fit of rage, Dylan kills Dwight on the spot. Terrified, Sean suggests using a crane to lift the van out, but Dylan refuses. Heavy machinery would attract too much attention. Instead, he decides they'll need a team of professional divers, experts who can work quietly and recover the goods without anyone finding out. For now, Dylan spares Sean's life. Next, we meet a small diving company run by three people: Clara Bennett, who loves diving, Jimmy, a skilled diver, and Ernie Morgan, their boss, who has now become an alcoholic. The war has just ended, and life is hard. Business is slow, and Ernie may soon have to sell all his equipment to pay off his debts. One afternoon, Clara and Jimmy are testing a new diving suit while Ernie sleeps off his hangover. Clara wakes him up and tries to cheer him. Ernie feels hopeless. They haven't had a job for months and recently lost a big bridge contract. But Clara reassures him that things will get better. That same day, Dylan Maddock and Janusz Wojcik arrive, asking to see the boss. From their demeanor, it's clear they're involved in something illegal. Dylan is a gangster, and also a racist, a patriarchal thinker, and a cruel man. When they meet, it turns out that Dylan and Ernie once served in the war, with Ernie in the Navy. After a short conversation, Dylan offers him a special job, but first asks if his crew can handle it. Ernie assures him his team is the best there is. Dylan explains that a van has sunk in the river but refuses to reveal what's inside, saying it's confidential. He pays a large advance and promises more once the boxes are recovered, enough money to solve all of Ernie's financial problems. The conditions: no reports, no questions, and they must only retrieve the boxes. Desperate, Ernie accepts the job. When he tells his team, Clara feels uneasy, the job sounds dangerous, and Dylan seems untrustworthy. But Ernie reminds her that they haven't had work in 4 months. This money could buy a new boat, repair their gear, and even get modern diving suits. Reluctantly, Clara agrees, understanding Ernie's situation. Diving is her passion, and she trusts him, unaware of the danger ahead. The next day, they arrive at the riverbank where the van sank. Dylan greets Ernie warmly but looks down on his crew, Clara for being a woman and Jimmy for being Aboriginal. Ernie defends them, insisting they're the best divers he knows. Dylan questions both. Jimmy proudly says he spent half his life in the water, while Clara boldly replies that being a woman doesn't make her weak. She's skilled and well-trained. Still mocking them, Dylan calls Ernie Captain Nemo. Ignoring him, Ernie sends Clara to dive first because he doesn't trust Dylan or his men, and to keep Clara safe from being left alone with them. Eagerly, Clara prepares to dive with Jimmy. Their old heavy diving suits are far from modern, slow, risky, and dependent on surface air supply. Nevertheless, they descend into the water. Ernie operates the air pump on the surface, while Dylan and his men watch from the riverbank. Clara and Jimmy dive in. The depth is about 15 to 18 feet. After searching, they find the sunken van and stay in contact with Ernie through the radio. Clara reports that the van is lying on its side, making it impossible to lift without a crane. But Dylan doesn't care, he only wants the boxes. Underwater, they attach a guideline rope to mark the van's position. Then, Clara tries to open the door, but it's locked and the keys are missing. The murky water limits visibility. Suddenly, something brushes against her. A shark attacks, slamming into her metal helmet. The impact doesn't break it, but it snaps her air hose, cutting off her oxygen supply. Ernie panics and orders Jimmy to find her. Clara, unconscious, drifts until Jimmy reaches her and pulls her up. For a moment, Ernie fears she's dead, then she coughs and gasps for air. Dylan and his men remain unmoved. Later, Jimmy finds a shark tooth embedded in Clara's helmet, proof of the attack. Everyone is shocked. Sharks aren't supposed to live in rivers. But it's a bull shark, a species that can survive in both salt and fresh water. Dylan still refuses to believe it and lashes out at Ernie's team until Ernie declares that no one will dive again while the shark is still out there. Dylan now needs a shark hunter, but coldly says the cost will come out of Ernie's pay. After he leaves, Ernie praises Jimmy for saving Clara and asks if he saw what was inside the van. Jimmy says no, but they'll find out tomorrow. Ernie tells him to keep it secret. Later, he checks on Clara, who apologizes for failing him, but Ernie reassures her, what matters is that she's alive. Meanwhile, Dylan and Janusz return, saying a fisherman will arrive in the morning to deal with the shark. That night, Dylan asks Clara why she risks her life for this job. She says she loves the ocean, and Ernie gave her a chance when no one else would. When she asks about his own work, he refuses to answer, confirming he's involved in something criminal. Clara urges him to stop, and Jimmy agrees, but Ernie says they can't, there's no other work. The next morning, before the fisherman arrives, a police officer shows up. Dylan's men panic, but Dylan stays calm and lies, saying Sean was driving and no one was hurt, so they didn't report it. He even mentions the shark attack, and the officer believes him, then leaves. Soon after, a fisherman named Bob arrives, talkative and confident. He promises to kill the shark. Jimmy joins him on the boat, and Dylan forces Sean to go along too. Bob sets the bait, and before long, the shark appears nearby. Jimmy fires his gun, but the bullets lose speed underwater, doing no harm. The shark rams the boat, throwing them all into the river. Jimmy and Sean manage to climb back aboard, but Bob is killed before their eyes. Horrified, Jimmy and Sean barely make it back to the riverbank alive. After Bob's death, everyone is terrified, except Dylan, who laughs it off, mocking the situation. This angers Clara, and Ernie finally declares they must report everything to the police. Dylan tries to stop him, but Ernie throws Dylan's money back, saying he's done working for him. Enraged, Dylan and Janusz pulled out their guns, threatening to kill them if they refused to finish the job. It was now clear that the boxes contained something illegal. To stay alive, Ernie reluctantly agreed. He asked what Dylan planned to do with them afterward, and Dylan lied, claiming he would let them go once the job was done. They went back to work, building a wooden sled to pull the boxes up from the river, not far from their location. They also dropped bait into the water as a distraction, hoping to lure the shark away long enough to finish the task. When everything was ready, Ernie decided to dive himself. He didn't want to risk Clara's life again. "You got dragged into this mess because of me," he said. "So I'll be the one to end it." Soon after, Janusz, who was keeping an eye on the bait, reported that the shark had been caught in their trap. It was the perfect time to dive. Ernie and Jimmy descended quickly, reaching the sunken van. Ernie opened the trunk and found the sealed boxes. They began loading them onto the sled to be pulled up. They worked fast, but the load was too heavy, so Jimmy suggested leaving a few boxes behind. Meanwhile, Janusz realized in horror that the shark had escaped the trap. Clara warned the divers over the radio to be careful and signaled Sean to start pulling the sled up. As Sean hauled it, Clara urged Ernie and Jimmy to hide inside the van, knowing the shark could return at any moment. To escape the attack, Ernie and Jimmy hid inside the van. But then, trouble struck again. The sled got stuck. They were forced to swim out and free it, which they managed to do. But the shark returned, biting Ernie's arm badly. Jimmy struck it with a harpoon, wounding it and freeing Ernie. Yet the shark came back once more, mauling Ernie again. Clara pulled them up while Sean brought the sled full of boxes ashore. Dylan, upon seeing the contents, was ecstatic, pure gold. Meanwhile, Clara and Jimmy held the dying Ernie in their arms. Clara begged to take him to a hospital, but Dylan didn't care. To him, Ernie's life meant nothing. Moments later, Ernie died in Clara's arms. His final words were a whisper, "Don't let them win." Grief turned into fury. Jimmy grabbed a knife and charged at Dylan's gang, but they had guns, and Clara held him back. Janusz sneered, threw down his gun, and challenged Jimmy to a knife fight. Jimmy threw his knife, hitting Janusz in the shoulder. Furious, Dylan raised his gun to shoot, but Clara stopped him, reminding him they were still needed. Some boxes were still underwater. Dylan lowered his weapon, knowing she was right. But his greed made one thing clear: once the job was done, he'd kill them all. Consumed by anger, Dylan beat Jimmy senseless, then locked both him and Clara inside a tent for the night. Clara tried to keep Jimmy conscious, whispering that they'd find a way out, that they'd survive this, no matter what. By morning, they were forced to dive again to recover the remaining gold. Dylan ordered Clara to dive, and though Jimmy protested, no one listened. Clara put on her diving suit and went back down. Working quickly, she loaded the final boxes onto the sled. While the men pulled them up, Clara searched the van and found a gun hidden under the driver's seat, which she secretly kept. But before she could surface, the shark returned, ramming the van. Clara quickly trapped it inside, sealing the doors tight, and escaped just in time. As the boxes reached the surface, Jimmy helped pull Clara out. She showed him the gun she found and hid it for the right moment. With all the gold recovered, Dylan's job was done, and now it was time to get rid of the witnesses. He ordered his men to tie Jimmy and Clara with heavy chains and sink them in the river. First, he told them to dispose of Ernie's body. But before they could act, the police officer from earlier returned. Seeing Ernie's corpse, he became suspicious. Suddenly, Sean shot him from behind, and chaos broke out. Jimmy lunged at Yanis, attacking him, while the wounded officer managed to shoot Sean dead. But before he could fire again, Dylan shot him down. At that moment, Clara grabbed her hidden gun and fired, wounding Dylan's hand and knocking his weapon away. Dylan dove for cover behind the van, bleeding and furious. Clara turned to Jimmy, who was struggling against Yanis. Before Janusz could kill him, Clara shot him, but her bullets ran out, and Janusz was still alive. Janusz lunged at Jimmy again, trying to drown him, but Clara smashed her heavy diving helmet into his head, knocking him unconscious and sending him into the water. Meanwhile, Dylan grabbed another gun from the car. At the same time, the shark that had been trapped in the van broke free. When Clara saw Dylan approaching with the weapon, she shouted for Jimmy to jump into the river, unaware that the shark was already loose. Dylan fired wildly as they ran for cover. He chased them in a boat, shooting non-stop. Clara cleverly rocked the boat, making Dylan lose balance and fall into the water. Jimmy managed to climb ashore, but Clara grabbed Dylan's leg, trying to drag him down. Then Jimmy saw the shark approaching and yelled for her to get out of the water. Clara climbed to the riverbank, grabbed the gun, and aimed it at Dylan. Dylan taunted her, calling her a coward who couldn't pull the trigger. Clara hesitated, but she didn't need to fire. In one brutal instant, the shark lunged and devoured Dylan alive, ending his reign of terror once and for all. Some time later, Clara and Jimmy returned to their old lives. They handed over all the recovered gold to the authorities, finally putting an end to the nightmare beneath the river. Though they were hailed as heroes, the memories of that night haunted them for years. The sound of Ernie's last breath, the gleam of gold under the murky water, and the sight of the shark's gaping jaws. One day, two visitors came to see Clara and Jimmy. One of them was Ernie's attorney, who informed them that Ernie had left a will, stating that all his possessions would go to Jimmy after his death. In addition, the bank rewarded them with 2,500 Australian dollars for returning the stolen gold to the government. After returning millions worth of gold, that's all they got. If you were in their place, would you really let that much gold slip away so easily? Because back then, according to historical records, gold cost around 21 Australian dollars per ounce, so that amount was actually quite a lot. Still, Clara and Jimmy were grateful. With that money, they could rebuild their diving business and start a new life. And with that, the story ends here, with the river finally quiet, keeping its secrets buried deep beneath the water. The story shows that true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the will to face it when everything is on the line. It reminds us that fear can either drown us or drive us to survive. The choice is ours.